Chris Meaney is bringing Eric Moody, Eric and Moody on the Twitter machine of ESPN. Absolutely loved my short time with you at The Athletic. I am so happy for you, dude. I love seeing you on ESPN. You are crushing it. You are one of my favorites in the industry. I really do appreciate you taking the time on this Friday to chop it up with me, man. Welcome in.
No, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I do remember our time at the Athletic very fondly, and thanks for the kind words. And I'm just surprised it took us so long to be able to do this. So let's dive in. We're talking about one of my favorite teams in the NFL, the New Orleans Saints. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I love it. I wanted to reach out a few weeks ago, and I know you're so busy. Everybody's so busy. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm going to reach out to my guy Moody and see if he's got some time for me, and you do. And I asked you, which team do you want to preview? And you said the New Orleans Saints, and I love it. This is a team that's favored here to win the NFC South in a division that a lot of people say not fantastic. I mean, according to DraftKings odds, you see plus 135 to win the division. Falcons at plus 240, the Panthers at plus 380, and the Buccaneers plus 750. A lot of different quarterbacks inside this division. Of course, Brady has gone from Tampa Bay, Desmond Ridder here in year 2, and Carolina, Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick. With the Saints, you see Derek Carr on the board here, now a member of the Saints. Their win total at 9.5. They're 17-1 to win the conference and 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. One thing I'll say just off the top here, Moody, about Derek Carr is, he's been a very accurate quarterback over the course of his career. Last year, things didn't work out for him all that well. He was throwing picks. He was asked to leave the team. He's never had a defense like this Saints team does have. And he's going to a team that had a top 10 defense last year, according to Football Outsiders, a solid offensive line. They got 3 running backs out of the backfield. He's got an alpha in Michael Thomas and a young buck in Chris Olave that a lot of people seem to like. Where do you think the expectations should be with the Saints? Do you feel like they should be division favorites? Is this a playoff team?
No, I do believe that they should be favorites in the division. And even thinking about it from a betting perspective, Chris, I do like the Saints going over 9.5 wins. And this is the team, obviously, with playoff aspirations. And you mentioned Derek Carr. His addition to this team was huge, just considering the quarterback carousel that they had last year. He's surrounded by playmakers. You mentioned some names of players that I'm very fond of. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara is there, Juwan Johnson. But I do believe that Derek Carr and Chris Olave, they'll be a duo that we'll be talking about quite a bit in 2023. Olave had the second best rookie season in Saints franchise history. He had 72 receptions and 1,042 receiving yards. But you mentioned the Saints defense too, which I'm very fond of. They had a solid defense last season. They've addressed a lot of issues this offseason. But I want to close on this one, talking about the Saints and their playoff aspirations, and then the Saints surpassing that win total. Is take a look at the schedule, though. I think the schedule really positions them for success. You've got the NFC South. It's not a daunting division, just considering the other quarterbacks in the division. The Panthers, they're going to have Bryce Young. Falcons, Desmond Ridder in his second year. The Buccaneers, I believe Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask will make some starts. And they also play the AFC South, which has a similar trend because you've got the Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence, obviously, great quarterback. But you've got a lot of uncertainty with the Colts, Anthony Richardson or Gardner Minshew. You got C.J. Stroud in Houston and Ryan Tannehill, who's up and down with Tennessee. And so just given that schedule, and also they face the NFC North as well, which don't have a ton of strong defenses. And so I just look at this Saints team as a whole, their defense and their schedule. I do believe they're positioned for success. So I do like them to go over 9.5 wins.
You mentioned the schedule. We've been doing this with some of our guests, so bear with me here. Let's walk through it. We can do a little rapid fire. We'll give them some wins and some losses, and we'll see what we have for them for wins. So they open up week 1 at home against Tennessee. Win or loss?
I believe that's a game that they can win.
All right. Well, I agree with you. 1-0. Then on the road, Monday Night Football in Carolina, inside the division against Bryce Young. Is that a W?
That's a W, especially that early in the season, right?
Yeah, 2-0 start here. Not bad in Nolans. All right. They go on the road again, and they play in Green Bay, Lambeau. Win or loss?
And this is tough, but when you consider them playing in Green Bay, my gut's saying a loss there.
Okay, let's give them a loss.
Yeah.
Let's give them a loss. Tampa Bay at home. They return week 4 to play the Bucs.
Yeah, I'm going to go win there.
You're going to go win. So we got them at 3 after 4 weeks. Week 5 in Foxborough to take on the Pats.
That's a tough one. I'm going to go loss there.
You're going to go loss there. And then week 6, rebound in Houston to take on the Texans.
Yes, that's going to be a W there.
We got them at 4-2 after 6 weeks. Week 7 at home against the Jags, who everybody seems to like. Their win total's at 10.5. Big step forward for Jacksonville last year with Peterson calling the shots, now adding Calvin Ridley to the squad. What do you think happens in that game?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one, just given how that team's constructed. So I'm going to go a loss there.
All right, so we got them at 4-3. In Indy, Week 8 to take on the Colts.
Yeah, I'm going to go a win.
A win. Week 9 at home against the Bears.
That's going to be a win. I think that'll be a very close game. But one thing about New Orleans, whenever they play at home, that atmosphere
you're not wrong.
It's different. Yeah, because I lived in New Orleans before moving to Dallas. Been following that team for a while. So some people may say, really, a win against the Bears? But I'm going there.
I'm with you. I'm with you for sure, right? It's in the dome. I like it. The atmosphere, it's rolling there early November. Week 12 before their bye week in Minnesota, inside a dome again to take on the Vikings.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm going back and forth. Gut says a loss, though.
Okay, so we give them a loss. So heading into their bye, we got them at 6-4, Week 12 in Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Always a great rivalry between Atlanta and New Orleans. Like, no matter where those teams are situated in the standings at that point of the matchup, it always seems like it's a really good game.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go with the win there.
All right, we got them a win. And then to take on the Lions at home, Week 13.
I'm going to go a win there.
Another win. And then Carolina again, this time at home.
I'm going to go with the win there as well.
Oh, they're rolling now, Moody. They're rolling now out of the bye. They're on a little bit of a win streak. Yeah, that schedule you have alluded to. Week 15 at home against the Giants. This will be their third straight game at home.
Yeah, and that was one looking at the schedule where I kind of highlighted. So that's going to be a loss against that Giants team.
We only need them to get one more. They wrap up Week 16 in Los Angeles against the Rams.
That's going to be a win.
That's a win, so we already have them at 10 there. And then Week 17 at Tampa, in Tampa.
Yeah, for that one, especially on the road, I'm going to go with a loss on that one because that's going to be a lot of time, obviously, passing. So these teams will get very, very acclimated with each other. And who knows what the quarterback situation will look like in Tampa at that time. Maybe we'll see Kyle Trask by that point. Who knows?
Who's going to play more games, Baker or Kyle Trask?
Oh, man. I'm just thinking about just some projections that I did. I think I have Baker with playing 10 games.
10 games.
And then
so
Kyle Trask was 7.
Yeah.
I keep going back and forth with that number, but that's what I keep coming back to.
And that's probably fair. Maybe they open up the season with the veteran quarterback. It's a division that they probably feel like they could win, and maybe they switch gears and see what they have in Kyle Trask. They wrap up Week 18 at home against the Falcons. It could be a lot on the line there. They could be resting players, but we already have them at 10 wins. Whether you give them a win or a loss, we do have them over there, the 9.5, which you can get over at a lot of sports books. Check out the prop shop, free tool over at FTM Bets to get the best there. So ultimately, we're talking about this offense. We'll break in a second and get more into their fantasy options. But do you feel like this is a team that is going to lean a little bit on the run game? And there's clearly some uncertainty with Alvin Kamara at the moment as well.
Yeah, there is some uncertainty, and that's why they brought in Jamaal Williams. They also have the rookie and Miller there as well. So I do believe that they'll be they'll have some balance there. I think for Derek Carr, if I'm looking at just kind of pass attempts, I could see him getting anywhere from maybe like 500 to 510 pass attempts. So he'll definitely take his shots and have his opportunity. But I do believe that they'll try to be balanced, just given the running backs and the running game that they have there with that offensive line.
Derek Carr doesn't seem – I don't feel he could be as bad as last year, but maybe not as good as a couple years ago when he was flirting with 5,000 yards. He really had that kind of breakout campaign. I see some books have him roughly around 3,900 yards, which is roughly inside the top 12 at the quarterback position. Do you feel like he could be a solid quarterback too in Superflex leagues for people that play in those formats?
Yeah, I do agree with you there. And if you're looking at someone like Derek Carr, I'm like, he's going to be kind of like a mid-range QB2 in my opinion. He'll definitely have some spike weeks where he delivers a QB1 performance. But I just think what we've been accustomed to with Derek Carr for the past couple of seasons, you're going to have some ups and downs. But solid QB2. I'm comfortable going to battle with him in the Superflex League as my quarterback too. So
love it. So we got the Saints at 10+ wins here. I agree with you as well. I think that this team is a playoff squad. I do think they win the division. Who do you think is the team that will give them the biggest fight to win the division?
Yeah, I would say my gut is saying the Atlanta Falcons. I like how that team's constructed. They got Bijan Robinson there. Strong offensive line. They got playmakers, Drake London.
Yeah.
They've got Kyle Pitts, of course. It really comes down to the progression that Desmond Ridder makes in his second season. And you never want to underestimate the growth a player can have, especially a rookie from one season to the next. And so I think that'll be the wild card with that team. Depending on how he performs, I think they're going to give the Saints the most trouble, I would say, in that division, just given how they're constructed right now.
And since we're on Bijan, before we break, top 5 back for you? Are you willing to take him in the first round? Because, dude, that's where it seems like he's going, man.
Yeah, there's a little bit of the unknown there, with a rookie, and then you still have Tyler Algier that's there. But I'm very comfortable taking Bijan in the first round. Like, if I have a top 6 pick, I don't have an issue taking him. I'm thinking back to some of the mock drafts that we've done at ESPN, and I'm like, in the 2 mock drafts we've done so far, Chris, I'm like, Bijan has been like a top 5 pick. Yeah. And so it's just the volume's there. He's young. We all know about the career trajectory of running back. So I'm willing to take the gamble, even though it's kind of stepping out to the unknown.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's never touched the field, but we have seen some rookies, right? Like Zeke and Saquon have some pretty productive seasons in their first year. It's a little uneasy. I'm not going to lie to draft a back that early that we've yet to see touch the football. But you mentioned the offensive line. It's certainly underrated. We saw Tyler Algier, hit this, 1,000 yards on just 200 carries. So what could Bijan do? And I do believe that, I don't know if Algier fully goes away, but there could be injuries that pop up, between now and week 1. He could be traded. Like, I think he's actually a decent buy low candidate in dynasty leagues, because I think that people that have him, myself, feel like, oh no, like, when could I ever start this guy? But I think he's a really good running back. And if he's on another team, whether, an injury opens up an opportunity for him on a new team, or maybe it's a couple of years from now and he just signs a contract with another squad, I think he's an interesting target as well. But your latest tweet just 47 minutes ago, man, it really brings me back. Holy 2002 top 7 PPR running backs. Priest Holmes, 440 points. LaDainian Tomlinson, 384. Ricky Williams, 362. Charlie Gardner, Sean Alexander in there. Tiki Barber, Clinton Portis. I had a lot of LT. I had a lot of LaDainian Tomlinson back in the day, and I just remember drafting him, and it was always a fight. Who could get first pick, who could take LaDainian Tomlinson, and he certainly was a cheat code, but a lot of good backs on there. You asked people their favorite. Who was your favorite of that bunch?
Yeah, you know what? I'm just thinking, like, watching tough. Like Priest Holmes was the guy. Now I've got fond memories of watching Jamal Charles as well, but just watching those Priest Holmes highlights just really bring me back. So he would be my guy. He would be my guy.
Yeah. He was a baller. I'm watching the footage, breaking tackles. Nobody could take him down. No. He's fantastic. Speaking of backfields, Quan, you do have the ADPs over at Underdog Fantasy of these Saints players. We already highlighted on Carr, quarterback 19. We both think pretty decent value there in Superflex leagues as your second quarterback, going around pick 162 on average. And then you have the backfield here. And that's the question I think I've gotten a lot. I asked people to ask some questions here about the Saints. Got Lee Ving in the house, Kamara's role, and ADP value. So Alvin Kamara, RB32, 98 on average. Jamal Williams, RB37, pick 107 on average. And then the rookie Kendre Miller, which we just touched on in the last block there, RB45. How do you think this backfield shapes out? And I know it's tough, man. It really is tough to predict because, like we said earlier, we just don't know the status of Alvin Kamara. But Jamal Williams was a really good get. And a steal last year. I mean, I took him in round 26 of a deep league, but this guy was a waiver wire pickup. He led the Lions in touchdowns. He broke all kinds of records, including Barry Sanders in Detroit, 17 rushing touchdowns. And then you got the rookie Miller, who they were kind of aggressive getting in the draft. Is this a stay away backfield from you? Like, who do you think emerges? Who's the guy for you, Moody?
Yeah, it's difficult because you mentioned the legal situation with Kamara. Potential multi-game suspension, we don't know. So I would say probably the safest bet, and this is the player that I've been acquiring probably the most in drafts, is Jamal Williams. I'm like, they did sign him and bring him onto the Saints team for a reason. So even if Kamara plays, 14, 16 games, whatever that number is going to be, I'm like, Jamal Williams is still going to be someone that's actively involved. Probably my biggest concern about Kamara last year was, I'm like, his role in the passing game is night and day when he was with Sean Payton. And now that Sean Payton's gone, it's just different because he didn't catch more than like 2 passes in a game, like from week 13 on, like last year. And so I would just end up targeting Williams. I think he's someone that you can pick up, add to your team, and who's a viable flex option. I know a lot of people are enamored by Miller, but with him kind of coming off injuries, being like a rookie, all those different factors, I'm like, it may take him some time to get acclimated. But Williams is essentially a plug and play, especially if Kamara does get suspended.
Michael Malone in the house. And this is kind of what we just touched on here, Moody, when we were talking about the defense, right? Derek Carr had a solid defense once in his career, and the Raiders went 12-4. We wanted to sprinkle some Super Bowl odds here. We didn't really touch on them from a Super Bowl standpoint, but we went through their schedule. We got them at 10+ wins. We like them to win the division. Is this a team that can compete with the Niners, with the Eagles, with the Seahawks?
Yeah, I believe the Saints can, like we talked about with that defense. But I think success or failure, if we're looking at them from a Super Bowl contending perspective, really boils down to Derek Carr and how he performs. I'm like, if he's average to above average for an entire season, doesn't have any slip-ups, then it's possible. So I think he's going to be the X factor in really elevating that team, or this Saints team, to that next level. But hey, it's given those odds, why not sprinkle like a little bit on there, right? Nothing wrong. I
agree, because that's right. The AFC is loaded. Like we can agree on that. There's a clearer path in the NFC, and I mean, even just looking back this time last year, I was thinking to myself, the Rams and the Bucks, like how could those two teams not go? And then injuries happen. And we really just saw the Niners and the Eagles and the Vikings, which nobody really believed in, as the three teams in the NFC last year. So we like them to win the division. They're favorites to win the division, and a lot of teams across the NFL, if you look at the favorites to win the division, you're not going to get 40-1 odds to win the Super Bowl. So not a bad little sprinkle like you mentioned. Let's talk about the weapons. We talked about Carr, we talked about the backfield. I'm in total agreement with you, by the way, about Jamal Williams. I think he's a really nice target in drafts, especially for the zero RB people. Chris Olave, wide receiver 13. He was the only wide receiver last year to finish inside the top 10 in ADOT and air yards among wide receivers with like 50+ targets. Now, Michael Thomas, unfortunately, only played 3 games, but Moody, those 3 games, they were pretty good. 16 grabs, 171 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was limited to 7 games in 2020, did not play in 2021. This guy's got 10 games, really, since the end of the 2019 season. It's all baked into his price as wide receiver 48, 106 on average. I'm sure you're on Olave, kind of just hearing you in the last block. Are you comfortable with him being your wide receiver 1 in draft? And is Michael Thomas worth your time?
I'm very comfortable with Olave, being my wide receiver 1, just depending on how I'm building my team. I think this stat really I think the stat that I'm about to break down really tells the tale and potential too of Olave in 2023. I'm like, you look at Olave, last year, he was only one of 9 wide receivers last season who accumulated 1,500 air yards, had a 20% or greater target share, and had 2+ yards per route run. Now, the other 8, really great names here: Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, and Terry McLaurin. And so when you bring in someone like Derek Carr, who's a capable quarterback, because it was a carousel last year, it really shows you the potential that Olave brings to the table. As far as another wide receiver you mentioned, Michael Thomas, I'm okay drafting him at his average draft position, but my mindset is that he is going to miss some games. And with the target share that Olave is going to get, he may not be as productive as he was obviously in the past. But he's a player that does worry me if I add him to my team. I'll have to have a contingency plan if he misses time. Just to your point, Chris, just given his injury history over the past 3 seasons and the games that he's played in. So
the price tag has been a little bit hard to swallow over the past couple of years. It put a dent in your wallet. At least here, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't work out, but, Lee brings up, does he even want to play anymore? It's tough, game if you're not committed, but everything I've heard from Thomas, he seems motivated. Carr seems motivated to play with him, talking about a violent route runner. So we'll see. I'm sure Thomas, I would say he wants to play football leaving. I would say he is motivated to play. Unfortunately for him, he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. We'll get you out of here on this. Is there a sleeper on the squad? Are you in on Juwan Johnson as a tight end? Is there somebody else that you think could step up? Because if Thomas does go down and misses some time, it can't just be all Olave. Carr's going to be looking at somebody else inside this offense.
Yeah, and this is a great question, Chris. So I'll close on this. It's like Juwan Johnson is someone that I'm looking at. Especially if you're waiting on tight end or operating a tight end by committee, he's a great option. And he had a breakout season in 2022, showing significant improvement, in my opinion, really after being like a non-factor in his first couple of seasons in the league. Like his usage increased notably. Like he had 65 targets, 508 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, finishes the tight end 15. But one thing about Carr, I guess like with this tendency to target big athletic tight ends, like Johnson's size and skill set, really makes him an intriguing option for growth in 2023. I know he's watched some film like on Julian Edelman just to prepare for that kind of slot receiver / tight end hybrid, whatever you want to call that he'll have in 2023. And we all saw how successful Hunter Renfrow was catching passes from Derek Carr. So I think we could see something similar with him. And I'm not worried about Foster Moreau. I'm not worried about Taysom Hill. They may operate as inline tight ends, but from the passing game perspective, you're looking at Johnson will be the guy. So that's someone that I would recommend to target as a sleeper.
Love it. Love that call. I like Johnson as well. Man, he looked really good at times last season. More room to grow. The thing with Carr, and I just think about him with the Raiders and just playing inside that loaded division and conference and how brutal the secondary was in his defense and having to do maybe too much. And that's why I think what we break down here is that he may not be asked to do as much in the past. Keep it simple, be a game manager, rely on the run game, rely on that strong offensive line, and a good defense behind you as well. It could be a really nice season for Derek Carr and the Saints.